We, you and me, are going to thumbnail some comics pages together. It's time to turn these rough notes into comic pages. And the first step involved in that is creating thumbnails. I'm trying to think about the composition of pages. I'm trying to think a little bit about the acting. I'm just trying to make all these story ideas look like a comic book. For some context, I've been doing this for a very long time. I've figured out what works for me and what doesn't. So if you are watching this and hoping to figure out how this is supposed to go, I'm here to tell you it's going to involve some trial and error. You'll have to figure out what works best for you. You'll have to figure out what you like and what you don't like. You'll have to make your own way from all of the messy ideas inside your head to getting squares onto pages. I didn't get this process right the first time. When I started making these comics, this is the first Delilah Dirk book. When I started making this comic, I was laying everything out square at a time, sort of like a storyboard, sequential storyboard panels, which is fine. Like the goal here is to get the mess inside your head out onto some paper. So however you do that, that's fine. And that worked for me at the time, but I wasn't really accounting for page breaks or for that that 2-page reading experience. So it involved a step where I had to go in and look at all those little squares, and then say, okay, how do we arrange these on a page? So I worked on that in bits and pieces. And when it was time to tackle one large project all at once, I decided to write out the entire story as a novel-style manuscript. So I printed it out. It looks like a novel that you could be reading. And I took that and broke it down into even page, odd page, even page, odd page, and then took that to thumbnails. For this new project, for Practical Defense Against Piracy, I wanted to get away from that manuscript idea because I was worried that it was making things too novel-y, not comicsy enough. So this time, I sit down, I take some notes, I try and get everything out in sequence. Try to get everything out of my head, just like, what do I need to include? Who do I need to include? What are they thinking? What are they saying? And then I go straight to planning my pages. And thumbnails are how we do that. It's just a little drawing that gives us a look at the contents of our page, like a thumbnail view of photos in your Finder. You'll see, it's self-explanatory. Probably, maybe. I should also mention, for the first 2 pages, I did not prepare anything ahead of time. I am making this up as I am recording it and going along. So I only ask for your patience with regards to all the uhs and ums, and I'll probably cut out a bunch of the parts where I'm just sort of sitting there and thinking. And then when we get to the second 2-page spread, I did prepare something in advance, and we can just sort of walk through the thoughts of getting that on page. So, if this feels like a bit of an awkward video, thank you for your understanding. As I get into this, there will be some spoilers. Now, I am of the opinion that if small story spoilers are going to ruin an entire experience for you, then maybe I am not working hard enough at my job. My job is to make sure that you could read about it all on Wikipedia and still want to read the story. That's my goal. Anyway, spoilers will ahead. Story-wise, it's 1795. After years and years away, Sophia Nikos and her family have returned to her Mediterranean hometown, Archipelago, on the fictional island of Astoria. Things are very different there than she remembers them, and they're different in a bad way. Her brother, Nikos, is head of the local government, but the town is ruled by foreign powers, and the big cheese on the island is the Proveditore named Vignelli. Because of rumors about pirates in the Mediterranean Sea, Vignelli has instituted a bunch of expensive, elaborate safety precautions. And when we jump into these pages, we're going to see Sophia taking her brother to task for the way that her hometown has the way everybody's lives there have slipped considerably since the days that she remembers. Okay, so let's go thumbnail these pages. Here is the script I am working from today. We are all at a ball. Mom Sophia has brought her daughter Alexandra to the ball. They are currently at dinner. All of Alexandra's nervousness about ball type stuff has been replaced just by a desire to make. She's seen how much she's hurt her mom, and she wants to make up with her. So that's where we're sort of starting off. We're at dinner. We can see that in the thumbnail that we've just started here already. Alexandra will decide to apologize to her mom for mistreating her, and that's what she wants to do. Unfortunately, they are at a ball, and at dinner right now, they're seated too far apart to be able to speak. I've got Alexandra down here and Mom over here, with some people between them, as well as visually a candlestick in the foreground to separate them as well. But this is all one panel here. Now let's look at our goal. Let's look at what I'm going to try to be accomplishing today. Here's what I'll be referring to. So, we can start right at the top here. Dee Dee wants to have a minute alone with her mom, but chooses to have a quiet apology. She chooses, that's the important part, she chooses to have a quiet apology with her mother, but everything is too busy. She's seated so far away at dinner. We see Mom a few seats over in one direction. We see Katerina, that's K, a few seats over in the other direction. I've made a note to myself here to try and squeeze Katerina in there somewhere. Katerina is looking uncomfortable, being pressed upon by a Venetian creep. So, here's the bulk of what we're going to be working with, as well as what's on this page. But to start here, so Mom is interacting with Nikos. Her brother, Nikos, is her brother, and is the local leader of the town. Vignelli, who we will see in the next scene, is the Venetian proveditore, or head of the administrative body. He is the head of the town, but Nikos represents the people who truly go back in history on this island. So, Mom wants to press in on Nikos and confront him about, hey, why is everything so miserable now? How have you let this happen? At the ball, we'll see the opulence of everything. The silverware sparkles, and there's so much of it. Like 1 fork, 2 fork, 3 fork, 4 forks. There'll be glittering candlesticks. We've already got one of those. Tureen, sparkle, sparkle, and so much rich food. This is in contrast to what we've seen in the town so far, where things are looking pretty impoverished. Mom wants to know, like, the Venetians live like this? Well, Nikos lives so humbly, and we see this welcome, or we can think back to the welcome luncheon from chapter 1, which was nice, but certainly not on the scale of what the Venetians are offering. Sophia sees that imbalance. Nikos will try to defend himself. It's been difficult over the last few years. He says, we'll just be glad we're safe. He says that the harbor is a safe haven, but Sophia, or Mom and Sophia. Sophia points out that the fishermen have no tar. They're short on wood. They need new nets. Nikos points out the shepherds are armed to protect themselves. Sophia points out, but their sandals are worn. Nikos says the washerwomen have guard dogs, as if they might need that. Sophia points out that they have no soap. And then I also have a post-it note here. Additionally, Sophia wants to know, she grew up on this island, so she knows the traditions. When was the last time you had the blankety-blank festival? I don't know what the name for that festival will be yet, so we'll come up with that at some point. And that's a revision that I have to, those are some pages I have to inject into chapter 2. So we all know about the blankety-blank festival. Sophia wants to know, when was the last time you had the blankety-blank festival? Nikos estimates, it's been maybe 3 years. Meanwhile, Sophia says, well, how often do the Venetians do this? Meaning the big ball and that sort of thing. And Nikos realizes he cannot defend against any of this. These are all... Sophia's pointing out some things that he can't really avoid. Or he can't really help but notice. He looks around with fresh eyes again, clink, clink, sparkle, sparkle, laugh, spit, grab at all the Venetians, etc. And he thinks to himself, or he thinks out loud. He tries to explain himself, says it happened so slowly, the change from their previous situation to their lower situation now, and he says he thinks about how every step seemed to make sense, and admits that the situation is bad. Then at the head of the table we see Vignelli and the captain. The wine is coming around, and this will connect to a scene from chapter 1 where we learn that Nikos has good wine, good delicious wine, but he doesn't share it with the Venetians, and he doesn't share it with... he tries to keep it a secret, just as a sort of protective measure. Then we have the captain and Vignelli. I've got 1, 2 swapped around here. The captain is saying how the Proveditore was just telling me to avoid the wine, that it's no good, and then the captain calls down to Nikos saying, I was just saying, you got some great wine, you should send a bottle or 2 up this way. Captain continues, I don't claim to be a man of great nose or refined palate. My skills are in the realms of leadership and commanding men. So he's trying to inject a brag where one is not necessary. But Captain, reminds Nikos, hey, that wine you poured for us was good, wasn't it? So the captain has basically revealed to Vignelli that, hey, Nikos has all this great wine. Why don't you, how come your wine is so bad, Proveditore? So this is the first that Vignelli learns about this great wine that Nikos has been keeping secret. He says, is that right, Nikos? Nikos is outraged / maddened / deflated / sad, as you would naturally react to having your secret spilled like that. He fakes a smile, says, we must have had a lucky few bottles, but I'll send some up. Vignelli says, no, send the whole cartload, Nikos. You know I wouldn't judge a batch based on a few bottles. Nico begrudgingly says, yeah, will do. And then Vignelli turns the screw, saying, send someone now. We're celebrating a birthday tonight, right? Your daughter will be sad. Vignelli is mistaking Alexandra for Nikos' daughter. I'm trying to suggest that Vignelli's out of touch and doesn't really know or care about the people he's interacting with. We see Nikos. Vignelli's turning the screw. We see Nikos suffering, basically. And this will all come into play a little bit more later. And it builds on what we've seen so far. And then Dee Dee says, it was tomorrow. My birthday was tomorrow. Because there's not a running gag, but Vignelli has set up this party ostensibly to celebrate, among other things, Alexandra's birthday, but he has done so without any particular care. Alexandra's birthday is actually tomorrow, but Vignelli's having the party tonight. What does he care? He doesn't care about anything. Okay, so that's our recap. How are we going to turn these into pages. The most important part here is that I want to see this all sync home with Nikos. I think that's the major takeaway. We don't really need to emphasize these details. We just need Sophia to ask him that stuff. I just want to see his fresh eyes and him being confronted about it and making this realization. And then we want to add insult to injury and ruin the one good thing that Nikos has is the secret wine. We want to ruin that. The captain spills the beans to Vignelli on this page. And now I don't want this to take up too much space because it is sort of a side note. It's certainly not the focus of the story. I want to get back to Alexandra and her mom. So I'd like to do this over 4 pages, which feels tight, but we will see. I'll keep this handy. So we've seen ourselves. We've got this big 2-page spread of us entering the ball, also learning a little bit about Dee Dee's birthday. We've established 4 pages. I want to do this in 4 pages. So down in this corner here, or down in this area, I want to get the reader's attention, and I want the captain or Vignelli to call to Nikos. Then we've got that question at the bottom of page 22 that will hopefully pull the reader to the next page. And we've got this moment we want for Nikos, but I don't know where to put that. I don't know if I want to put it here. I think we might want to I've also got this line of dialogue where I'm just like, hey, let's try just saying things plain. So it's there for the reader to understand easily. Sophia basically says, Nikos, hey, you were so busy Now, it's temporary dialogue. I probably shouldn't have written any dialogue for this. At this point, it should be like just bullet point notes like that. But I did write some dialogue because it just makes it easier for me to understand. Sophia says, Nikos, you were so busy watching the sky for threats, you didn't notice the snake digging out the ground beneath your own feet. And none of that's a super solid metaphor. But just like filling in the blank on the festival, that's something we'll have time to fix up later. Let's just give ourselves 2 more pages. A little room around the side. So this is all assuming we can accomplish this all in 4 pages or 2 2-page spreads. So at the bottom of page 22, we'll have Vignelli and the captain. Then on these 2 pages, we'll have that interaction. Captain telling Vignelli about the wine, and maybe there's room here for Nikos to have a sad moment, basically. That's about as good a word as any for it. This is our Alexandra. Doesn't need to be more than a basic indication. Let's see. We need Nikos and Sophia to either be sitting across from each other or side by side, so they can interact closely with each other. In this panel, let's see Mama. Let's see Mom. Maybe she's holding up a knife or a fork or something, and maybe there's just cutlery, just so much cutlery on the table, so much plates, shiny, 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 shiny. Lights, candelabras in the background there, that sort of thing. Mom's holding it all in her hands, taking it in. Just, wow, look at all this. Let's hear her whisper over to Nikos and say, and confront him about this. Nikos will defend himself. And then let's have the sort of list of trials down here. How are we going to show... How will we show that Nikos... How will we show that Nikos is... We want kind of... Maybe we need a Nikos down here, and we need to put everything in here. No, so we need a Sophia on the bottom, so we can have our maybe three or four items. Let's say 4 right now, and then when we get to drawing the line art, we can decide whether 3 or 4 looks better, sounds better, works better. Give ourselves a little more room. Yeah, on either side. So this will be our itemized list of of grievances, basically. And Nikos... Am I trying to squish too much in here? Maybe, maybe not. Because okay. I don't want Sophia leaning over like this because that's so similar in size to Alexandra right there. We want... It might be kind of funny if they lean across the table towards each other because they're all in fancy dress and the situation is so elevated. It might be kind of cute to see her leaning towards him and vice versa to talk across the table at each other. Then we can jam all of this centerpiece stuff like the candelabras up in their faces and make sure that it's really present in the compositions, whereas if they're just side by side, then they can just whisper to each other normally. It will be funny after all of Sophia's talk about English lady stuff and propriety and being ladylike. Might be fun to have her sort of do this. She's so overcome by the opulence of the way the Venetians are holding this ball that she said that she doesn't care. She needs to confront Nikos so bad that she'll lean across the table even though it's not very ladylike. We should flop that. No, but then she can't look from left to right there, because then here we have her looking left to right into this panel, which leads us into this panel, and then we have Alexandra here and looking left to right at Mom. So how do we get from her there to her confronting Nikos? We could just have a shot of Nikos with his mouth full of stuff. And then we could have our itemized list vertically there. And I want to keep this... I want to sit them down at the table at the start of this page because I really like this 2-page spread up here. So I don't want to intrude on the format of this spread by putting this at the bottom here. So at this point I have no idea what is the best option. So the only thing really to do is to put something down and see what it looks like. So even though Sophia is facing this way here. Maybe she can lean across and hiss at Nikos. With all the candles and everything. Tureens and food were low. And there's somebody else's dish. And she gets... Let me separate everyone. Oh, but then that's so similar to that. But then we can include Alexander for orientation back here, but we can't. No, we can't because there are too many people. People. And also it's weird to be going right to left there. Maybe we just gotta make some room up here for our itemized list, or make itemized list. We can have, so the way I'm thinking of this itemized list is we'll have Nikos on top saying, hey, we're safe because of this and this and this. And Sophia's saying at the bottom, saying, yeah, but it's blah, 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 blah. And her balloons will come up in here. His balloons will come down here. So he can be over here talking. And she can be down here talking back to him. And I want him to look around with these fresh eyes and stuff. I also want I want her to get his attention. Oh, and then at some point, I was supposed to try and fit Katerina in there somewhere. She might have to wait for the next sequence. We could use this space down here to give Nikos his time to reflect. We could give him that. And then we hear off screen, hey, Nikos, which will pull us onto the next page. But at least here we get to see Nikos do a realization, and then we can pull back from him a little bit. He looks over here, pull back from him, give him a little space to be miserable. See Sophia in the foreground, softening maybe a little bit on him. And why don't we see clear through between the two of them there? Move all these candlesticks out of the way and tureens and stuff, but we will see not footmen, what do you call them? Waiters, not waiters, attendants, shuffling past in the background. I guess we've just selected a bit of a low angle here. But if we get a low angle, then we get to give Sophia a little bit more presence in the frame and a little bit of a position of superiority, a feeling of superiority over him. But we can set him back. We can set him back a little further. That's the chair around him. And attendants back here. There's some room for dialogue over here. He can tell us about it happening slowly and Every step seemed to make sense. Okay, let's go with that for now and get back here. The tricky part here is we need to come up with something for Sophia to say. No, but we need Sophia to say something to confront him on that. First we need to establish where they are, and Sophia needs to say something to confront him. Then Nikos needs to take in what she said and react. And then we go over to his rationalizations. It's a lot on this page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 panels. Which is not, doesn't give us a lot of breathing room. And so the question there is like, do we just add 2 more pages for this ostensibly short sequence? Do we need it for Nikos' moment to land? Is Nikos' moment that important, really, in the whole scheme of the story? It's not super important. I do like it. So let's go in, and it humanizes him a little bit as well, and it's a good contrast to when we met him. He was so blustery and full of he was teasing and full of good nature and that sort of thing, and it's nice to see him. I think it's important to see that he's not, and it will be later important to see that he's not wholly on board with the way things have gone. Continuing this idea of keeping her superior to him, let's do a down shot-ish type thing. Ooh, and then we get to see more of the table. Maybe. But let's draw our characters first and our table second, so that we know we're fitting everything appropriately. And we're going to flop her. She's facing right to left here. She's going to face left to right here, because I want to. She's leaning out over her chair and out over her food and whatever is there. We see that Nikos is across from her. Let's give everybody a place setting at the table. Here's the stranger. So we're cutting Alexandra out now. She doesn't need to be a part of this, but here's a stranger at his seat here. It's a fun opportunity to make a real creep. Or maybe they can, let's have them lean back so that they contrast more with Sophia's forward. Maybe totally doing their own thing off here. Faceless figure there, faceless figure there, and then all of our cruft in the middle of the table, big dishes, service à la française. In the middle there. And then the other thing I'm trying to do is sort of think about and suggest some of the, I'm trying to do this real quick because I'm running out of video time. I'm trying to suggest the values, the dark and lights that we get during my thumbnail stage. Since there are candles there, obviously, then maybe this stuff will all be illuminated brightly. The faces will all be illuminated brightly. This is tricky though, because I've got, oh no, this should all be dark back here. Around our foreground figures, same here. Because if we make it dark, then that'll let us bring out the lights of the candelabras, or what do you call them? Chandeliers back there. So, I'm supposed to draw the balloons in first before trying to do that. Okay, so Alexandra to Alexandra to Sophia. So give me a word balloon here. Mom says Nikos. Maybe we can add more to that, but we'll worry about that later. There's room here to add additional stuff. I'm gonna split this just simply split this horizontally. So that's good variety. Downshot. Now I want, so Sophia, Sophia, Sophia in a diagonal line, Nikos. And have his own shot there. She's leaning forward. Here's all the fancy stuff in the foreground. Sophia. I'm not super worried about the acting here, but I will put a real confrontational look on her face. Maybe we include a bit of, no, that gives him too much strength in the frame. And let's make him, make her nice and large, and we're nice and tight on her. And we'll keep him relatively, not super small, but small enough. Also, Nikos is absolutely stuffing his face here, because that's Nikos. And Sophia will challenge him on this. So maybe she'll say something like, and this will be an equivocating gesture from Nikos. Sort of a, what am I supposed to do type thing. I mean, I could literally, God, that's so basic. That's such basic acting. To have him put his hands up like that. Reach across broadly with a food in his hand. Again, not too focused on the specifics of the drawing or the thing, just sort of like, sort of head on a tilt, like, hey, you don't understand. Shoulders up high. Sophia basically, like, what is all this? What'll happen is I'll write some temporary dialogue now, and then I'll probably have a shower. And in the shower, I'll have to get out and make a note, because I thought of what is the best thing to say in this scene. And then it will turn out 3 months later that wasn't the best thing to write, and I should probably revisit that. And so I'll revise the text again between the drawing stage and before the coloring is finished. So I took a break to turn over the laundry, but also to do a little writing and get some thoughts in order here. So let's get back to pages 21 and 22. So first of all, here's our big panel with Mom confronting Nikos. First she says, Nikos, what is all this? And we can put, what is all this? We can put what is all this over top of that. And then it's like, hey, the word balloon is actually connected to the thing that it's talking about, all this stuff on the table. What is all this? And then she'll explain, we'll go to her close-up, and we'll explain, or she'll explain what she means, which is, well, And there's so many candles. She expects the sun will be jealous. And more silver than a Babylonian horde. I drew this earlier and had Nikos saying something, but instead let's have him just, he's got a mouthful of food and looking just a little bit caught out. He was hoping that, now we are thinking about his acting, he was hoping that maybe she wouldn't bring it up, or that he wouldn't have to confront this thing that she would, this change that she would definitely notice. And we'll just have that. Here's his hand with his fork. So he's a little caught out. I was hoping Sophia wouldn't notice, but she has. Made some notes to myself here. He'll rally, or he'll try to rally. And we'll see him with a good-natured expression here, try to explain. And let's see, so he's here, and he's gonna be here. So he'll try to explain with his mustache, his shrugging shoulders. It's been difficult the past few years, but we're safe. We're safe. He repeats that as if that's the thing he really wants to focus on. We're safe. We're safe. And I write in just a sort of reminder of the idea for the dialogue. Don't need to record it explicitly because I can probably refer back to my earlier writing, but also if I don't, unless I have something that I feel really good about, like I'll write down something that I feel really good about if I want to be specific. If I got something, oh yeah, this dialogue is definitely worth keeping, then I'll make sure to write it word for word, but this stuff can change. So here's our list, which we'll get into in a sec. But here's Mom's big question, which is, okay, we're all so safe, but like how often do the Venetians do this? Which is the thing that Nikos will be ashamed about. Now, here's our itemized list of harbor is safe, shepherds are armed, and washerwomen have guard dogs. With Sophia's rebuttals, no tar, etc. Worn sandals, and the washerwomen have no soap. But then the last panel is about the festival, which is just a Sophia line. And so I wrote down a little bit of back and forth here, but we don't need Nikos to answer this question. We can just have Sophia say that maybe she learned somehow. And the last time you haven't had Festo in 3 years. Now look, it all runs together a bit here, but and it's a bit of a mess to look at, but give me a break. So the harbor is safe, so why don't we put why don't we, we could put a man in a boat with a leak coming through the bottom. That might be a little too cartoonish, but maybe that's good. Maybe that's the right thing to do. Otherwise, it's just all so sad. Let's return to imagery of. I kind of just want to return to our. We've seen all these areas and we've seen all these people at the start of chapter 2, and I kind of want to return to that so that the connection is obvious. So we can return to the boatyard with a boat up on stilts of the time, and maybe there are 2 guys tearing apart another boat to get the lumber they need to work, or the wood they need to fix up this other boat that's on the stands, or whatever the hell you call it. We've seen the shepherds with their sheep. We could draw the bottom of a shoe with clearly holes in it, or the bottom of his worn sandals. As he walks. There could be some sheep back here in the distance. What about a dejected washerwoman sitting on a stone with her beloved guard dog next to her, but the laundry untouched behind. There's the stream, which is nice. That's kind of does what we need it to. And then, like, how do we show the absence of a festival? It might be like, would it work? Would it read if we just saw a long shot of the town and how quiet it is, how the streets are empty, and give it a sort of desolate, quiet sort of look? I don't know. Why don't we settle on that for now? Just quiet town. We've seen the town a lot, but we just give it that like semi-abandoned sort of feel. It's pretty, but it's abandoned. Okay. And then we've already got a close-up of her there, so... And he can be in the foreground. There's Nikos in the foreground. And the table. And all that stuff. And this guy over here. This guy over here. And again, we'll have the candelabra in the background, maybe. Let's see Nikos in the foreground here. Sparkle, sparkle, sparkle in the background. Cruft, cruft, cruft in the foreground. Rich living, right? Nikos can hang his head even more than he does here. We'll get even a little bit tighter. It's a hard angle to draw, but all we need to do is indicate it here. And he doesn't look. Let's have him look away from Sophia in this shot. And again, Sophia. Occupying that. Occupying that foreground. They can be framed by the candlesticks now. Because now they're sort of on the same page and closer together. And then, what is so that is every step made sense and happened so slowly. And then Vignelli can say something obnoxious, like, Nikos, is that true? Which is a question, which makes the reader say, okay, let's go find out. So down, reconcile with Sophia, look up. Okay. So Dee Dee wants to apologize to Mom. They're separated by all this stuff. Mom's agog at the silverware, and she confronts Nikos about this. So Mom confronts Nikos. Nikos, what is all this? Nikos shoveling food into his face. What is all this? So many candles, son will be jealous, more silver than blah, 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 than a Babylonian horde. Nikos, we see Nikos be caught out. He tries to rationalize, says, look, it's been difficult over the past few years, but we're safe, we have this, ba-da-da-da-da, we have this, ba-da-da-da-da, we have this, and then Sophia's ba-da-da-da-da. And Sophia says, yeah, I had the blankety-blank festival for 3 years. Meanwhile, how often are the Venetians doing this? And we see all the Venetian splendor. He hangs his head. Nikos hangs his head. And then Nikos mutters sort of to Sophia, every step made sense, and it happened so slowly. And then from off screen we hear, Nikos, is this true? Someone's shouting at him, and it gets his attention. And he looks up, and we turn the page to wherever the next page is. Yes. Turn to page 23 and 24. Okay, so it took some time to charge the camera batteries. I took that time and prepared something so that we're not going into the next few pages as blind as the previous two. So this is our sequence as we talked about at the start, where the captain tells Vignelli about all the secret good wine that Nico has and hasn't been sharing. So Nikos has just heard a voice from off screen call to him. Let's see who is calling to him. I'm going to take a look down the table. And we're going to include a few things here. We're going to include Nikos in the foreground, craning to look. So here's our context for where he is. Craning to look down the length of the table where we have the captain of the Cordelia, a real macho pose, and he's sitting next to Vignelli at the head of the table. Let's make him a little smaller and sort of increase our sense of depth here. Dishes. There will be some strangers back here. And I also want to include an attendant carrying, I'll have to work out the specific composition of this later. An attendant carrying some wine. I'll make a note to myself there so we don't forget to include him. See all the way down the table. Dinner cruft. We'll just move it all a little bit out of the way so we can see clearly between Nikos. Here's a big N. And the captain and Vignelli. So we'll put this word balloon right by. Let's get our word balloon flow here, and then we know he's got to say some more here. So there's our captain. This Vignelli was telling me, avoid the wine. The captain continues, you've got great wine. Why don't you send some up here? And for that, we'll give him a close-up, sort of in the same position. Just so we can see, I don't know, come on, let's just look at his horrible, miserable face. His swishy hair and stuff. And then we have our little tangent here where the captain reminds you that he's a piece of garbage. So we've got him pretty small, then pretty tight, and then sort of medium. So we're not getting too repetitive. I'll save some of that for later. This is where he explains to Vignelli, hey, look, I don't know too much about wine because I have to worry about bigger, manlier things. And then we've got Vignelli here, and we're going to stick him in again here. It's a bit tight there. Well, you know what? It's just, but the thumbs are just a note. So we've got them tight there, bigger there, and then we're going to get an extreme close-up on Vignelli here. Straightforward little business there, but we've got a nice flow for him there. We've got some nice business there for here's our captain. Here's Nikos. There's Vignelli, sort of moving between the panels. Now, sort of break this up. It's the opposite of the top two panels. I'm giving myself a little square here for a brief reaction from Nikos. I'm worried that we are doing too much of just looking at Nikos' face. I know for sure I want him to give a faint smile here and tell Vignelli that maybe a bottle or two turned out okay. Well, I like the idea of him looking away. So, I mean, in this thumbnail here, I've got him turning to, face left to right. Vignelli here is facing right to left. We could have him facing left to right, which would communicate, hey, he's staring him down. It might be more interesting if he doesn't look directly at him, if he sort of avoids his eyes. It's cowardly. Nikos isn't necessarily cowardly, but he is not, proactive about fighting these situations. What about maybe the back of Nikos' chair? We don't see his expression, but he does have a hand on. We don't see his expression, but we do see him with a glass of water, maybe, but we do see Sophia looking across the table at him. There's nothing in their way. They're close. Sophia looking across the table at him. So let's make a note. And there's a look of concern on her face. And we'll also note Nikos holds water. That way we'll see that he's not drinking the wine that the Venetians have. So he can't, for example, he wouldn't make the argument, hey, wait a minute, no, your wine is great. What are you talking about? It's the exact same wine. Because he's got water in a glass. So that's good. And we'll keep him on the same side, but maybe we'll foreground the glass of water. And Nikos sort of mumbles, maybe a few bottles turned out okay. And on to the next page. So we get a nice moment of Captain being horrible, Vignelli being horrible, Nikos having his screw turned. Now on the next page, we're going to close this out with Alexandra, who, let's go right across halfway there. Alexander, who corrects Vignelli for his arrogant mistakes, and also just a little, like to turn the screw even further, a new pair of panels here that weren't, that I didn't write down earlier, but which I'm trying to make Vignelli as miserable to be around as I possibly can. This is going to help. So we've got Alexandra closing out here, then this little button with Vignelli, and then this nice broad panel, good proportions in here, where we see Nikos' misery, the captain saying huzzah, Vignelli being a monster, and again Sophia's concern for Nikos. And then the top here, let's match that to that, and well, we can match that to that. Happy coincidence there. In this scene, Vignelli will push the wine attendant away, wine will spill. And then I'm going to do which way is Nikos looking? We're going to do a little acting with Nikos. We're going to give him a brief pause here, and then he'll agree to send some wine. But which way is he looking? Because Vignelli's here, and Vignelli's going to be here. And he looks over his left shoulder to talk to Vignelli. Anyway, Nikos paused there. Now these are going to be matched in scale, just to make it. I like to do this every now and then. You don't. I'm going to talk about talking heads, but I like to. If they're going to be the same, let's just finish off what we're doing, and then we'll talk about talking heads in a sec. While I'm trying to draw all this stuff in. That's not quite right. What do I want from him? He's tight here. I want it to be. I want to. In this panel, I want him to climb up on the chair and say, "Send someone now." And I want him to look. I want to get him in a really ungainly pose, a pose that one that just looks sort of embarrassing and weak. It's what he has to do to get up on the chair that he's going to be standing on in this panel. So sort of bent over and one leg trailing and one leg up on the seat cushion with the chair there and the chair back. Alexandra with her plate of uneaten food. She's facing this way, and I want Nikos and Vignelli in this panel here. Vignelli reaches over and grabs food off of Nikos' plate. So just like literally the the most literal. Oh, he's slapping Nikos on the back too. He goes away eating some of Nikos' food and slapping him on the back. Now Nikos' body language is he's clearly gonna be disappointed that Vignelli has learned about this situation with the wine, but that's what makes Vignelli so horrible. He doesn't care. He can't. Can he read that sort of body language? I don't know. Probably. Maybe he can, and either he can and he doesn't care, or he can't. So there's that. Okay. So Vignelli, let's get this out of here for a sec. Vignelli pushes. Let's see. Push wine attendant. What does he say? Send the whole cartload. Nikos. There's a pause. I can't get this one right. I promised I was going to talk about talking heads. And sometimes you need a talking head. Sometimes I like talking heads. I like the sort of, and I think you can do them well. I don't think. Why am I trying? See, this is what I get for talking and trying to draw at the same time. Because then I got balloon, 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 all keeping all the balloons sort of in a line here. You got to go up to get to this panel, but that's fine. Send someone now. And then his Vignelli in this panel. We're celebrating a birthday. Your daughter will be sad. You're the best. Shoot. Okay, I need more room there. Let's get. So give ourselves a narration box here, and one here where Alexandra says, corrects him, it's a niece. Is that how you spell niece? That's how you spell niece. Okay, so wrapping this up. I want a different scale on him, so let's get close in on his face and get that shoulder up there and this arm down here on his chair and his knee up to his chest. The arm of the chair, let's just get a little tighter. There's his chair, suggest his body, get his butt in there. Send someone now. We get up close and then we get up far on Vignelli. There he is, his arms wide open. What an absolute jackass. Here's the captain saying, huzzah, for good wine. Nikos will have his head in his hands. And Sophia will be across from him, concerned. Maybe, that's a good, first of all, he looks like he's the wrong angle, but, and like I said, this body language is telling too much, but there's a bunch of other idiots around the table. Sophia maybe reaches across to him. Meanwhile, Alexandra is a sort of, let me see, she has not eaten any of her. No, oh geez. Well, then it's going to look like Vignelli's grabbing her food. That doesn't, I don't want that. So we could either remove this or take food out of the Alexandra situation. We can take the food out of the Alexandra panel. But we'll have her facing off this side because we want to get her out of this and sort of indicate that she's a bit separate. Distance from all their nonsense. We could even swap the values on her and the next part of the panel, or the next two panels, to suggest I like to separate them because these guys will be consistent with the previous panels in the sequence. Our characters in the foreground will be illuminated by the table candles, and we'll set the background a little darker. And then we can reverse that for DD here, for Alexandra. And then reverse it again for Vignelli grabbing food from Nikos. And then I'll just make sure I don't get confused about this later because I don't have it written down here, which is Vignelli takes Nikos' food off his plate. Now that I run the risk of that making no sense because he's here standing at the head of the table. We see him here. Like the pace of this will maybe get a bit jumpy, or the flow of this might be a little bit jumpy because he's here and then he's here and then he's here. We set up a sort of pace. This is all very continuous, and then we go to DD, and then we cut back, and all of a sudden Vignelli is here behind Nikos. But it might kind of be worth it for the little button there. Narration boxes. And by including everyone in here, this feels a little bit more like a closing panel for the scene. I'm not going to bother shading in the rest of this stuff. Maybe we could do one of these where I can just ignore this later if I don't like it. Let me reverse it between these two things just to give it a little bit of separation, a little bit of interest. Talking about like talking heads, this is a sequence where a lot of the interactions or a lot of the changes that happen are between characters and are emotional and oriented in the things that they're talking about and that sort of detail. So I don't mind seeing so many medium close-ups and talking heads and that sort of thing. This looks very similar to this. I don't like this echo here. So I might, but I do like this panel more than I like the setup for that. I do like Vignelli, but I don't like the way the captain's pose and Nikos' pose here are too similar. And it all just looks... So let's change that one. Ugh, gross. We could put him sort of looking up to Vignelli. Vignelli's standing here with his big blonde hair, and we could have the captain sort of bloviating about his strengths down like this, which is a bit which mirrors this a bit, but I'll take a look at that again in a sec. Here's another stranger over here. Plates of food and stuff. Yeah. Indicate the ground plane. So here's the attendant with the wine. Vignelli Captain explains how Vignelli, and here's Vignelli, was saying to avoid the wine, and I was just saying, you, close up on the captain, you've got some great wine, why don't you send some? And then the captain bloviates about his personal attributes, and then, but Vignelli says, here in his greedy gross close-up, is that right? Then we see Nikos with water, concern from Sophia, water close-up with Nikos. He admits with a faint smile, maybe a few bottles turned out okay. We see old Vignelli up here shove the wine attendant away, wine spills, etc. He says, send the whole cartload. Nikos, in shame and sort of sadness, says, okay, will do. And then we have this awkward shot of this intentionally awkward pose for Vignelli as he's climbing up to stand on his chair. He says, send someone now. And then we have this big, broad shot. Sophia reaching out to her wounded brother, saddened brother, Captain cheering, Vignelli standing on his stupid chair, Vignelli saying, we're celebrating a birthday night, etc., etc. Alexandra corrects him on the details. He's not a daughter, he's a niece. And her birthday will be tomorrow, while Vignelli grabs food from Nikos' plate and shoves it in his mouth. And I'm looking now to see, have I done anything too repetitive? Like, I don't want, you to open one page and there's a close-up of Sophia here, and then you turn the next page and there's another very similar shot of Sophia there. But so far everything looks it looks like we've got enough variety here. And I like talking heads because I like to see the acting and I like to see the emoting on their faces. That appeals to me. And these pages contrast with the previous spread. The previous spread sort of gives us a break. There's some talking heads prior to this sequence, but we get a big broad landscape shot here. We get a lot of variety in this spread here, and later on the chapter we're going to get a lot more dynamic, so I don't mind spending a little bit of time with everybody talking to each other and sort of navigating, in this case, navigating Nikos' difficulties. So there we go. Pages 21, 22, 23, and 24. Maybe I'll follow up with another video when it's time to draw those pages, and we'll see what stays and what goes and what changes. Usually once I give these some time to breathe, I notice some things I'd like to do differently. I like this. I like the cutaway to seeing all these things we've seen before, tying that imagery together. So that's a nice break between all these talking heads. And I like this button. I hope it works. I hope we'll have to think about that and see how that goes. All right, there we go. And so that's that. And we have 4 pages of thumbnails. Because I'm recording this, it took a lot longer than it ideally would. But that's how we get it down. That's the most exciting part of this process, is trying to figure out how to puzzle all these pieces together. And especially difficult with all this dialogue and all these talking heads. Next step is to take these, and I used to scan them in and enlarge them digitally and print them out. I haven't been doing that on this project, and I don't think I'm going to do that this time. I will probably just transfer these freehand to the final pages that I draw them on. Until we get around to that, I hope this provided some sort of value to you. Do not subscribe. This is probably my final video. There we go, and we have our thumbnails. They are ready to be transferred to larger drawing paper. I used to do that digitally, enlarge things and tighten them up a bit and print them out on my drawing paper. For this project, I have just been transferring them freehand, just reproducing the thumbnails freehand, and that's been working out pretty well. In the next chapter, I have an action scene coming up that I wouldn't mind sharing with you, so keep an eye out for that video if and when that ever happens. And after that, I will see you when we start to take these to the bigger paper. Or we won't. This might be the only video. I hope you enjoyed it.